Hello everyone, welcome to Baha'i on Air. My name is Ilona Rodgers. With me in the studio today is John Kavelin, who originally hails from Hollywood, California, and at the moment is working in Tokyo. Welcome, John.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
John, nearly everyone who comes from California works in the film industry. Are you an actor?
No, I'm not an actor, but I have worked in the film industry as a designer. At the moment, I am director of design for Disneyland in Tokyo. We have, as of September this year, or last year, 2001, opened a brand new theme park called Disney Sea, 2 brand new hotels, and it is now called Disney Resort. So I am one of 2 directors of design for the Disney Resort.
That's fantastic. How many people do you have working under you in your team?
We have about 18 people.
18.
And mostly Japanese, many of whom have been there for 18 to 20 years. So I'm joining a team of real veterans.
How many guests come through the Disney theme park every day?
We don't technically give out those numbers,
Okay.
but what I could tell you is it's between 60 and it's over 60,000.
So overall, how many people do Disney employ in that park in Tokyo?
I think there may be about 50,000 people working in all aspects of the place, yeah.
This is total entertainment.
Yeah, it is an extraordinary place.
Well, please do tell me, what are you doing here in New Zealand?
I'm actually taking a well-needed vacation, visiting friends all over the North Island, and attending an annual global virtues mentorship gathering. I was very fortunate to be involved in the formation of the international program called the Virtues Project when I was living in Canada briefly. And we are having our, I think it's 4th or 5th annual gathering of seasoned facilitators of the Virtues Program.
The Virtues Project has been incredibly successful here in New Zealand, in schools, in church groups, but every workshop that has been held here, you have never been here. And it's wonderful to have you here in New Zealand as one of the founders of the Virtues Project.
I hope it's the first of many trips here.
You, your sister and your brother-in-law are all Baha'is, and you created the Virtues Project. Is it a Baha'i project?
No, the Virtues Project is not a Baha'i program. I would be untruthful if I didn't say that its appreciation of the diversity of global culture and the history of religion was not inspired by the Baha'i belief that the humankind is one and the religions of mankind are all chapters in the same book. But as a program, it is designed for the world's children, the world's families, the world's schools. It does not favor any particular religion, and it has no religious agenda at all. In fact, for the school programs in our new Virtues Project Educator's Guide, all references to a divine being have had, for the most part, to be eliminated because the schools find that a very dicey subject. But it doesn't mean that the program does not still contain wonderful inspirational quotes from all sorts of other sources.
And I promise you that you will learn a new language, a language which can keep you in touch with the powers you have and the virtues of other people.
The program was basically designed to fill the need that we saw in parents initially who are trying to raise conscious children, but themselves may have been damaged by their own poor parenting. And we found that the religions of the world all address the issue of character, and that our purpose in life is to acquire virtues, which are the signs of God on this plane. When the sacred texts of all the world's religions in effect say we have been created in the image and likeness of God, clearly the way you and I look is very different, so God is not a blonde lady or a silver-haired man. the aspects of God that we can mirror are the virtues. And every parent, well-meaning parent, would love a way to both define what those virtues are and then determine how to instill them, or to not instill them, but to have them emerge in their child. Because the premise of the Virtues Project is that every child, every human being, is a mine that's rich in jewels of character that we call virtue. But without proper mining and without polishing, those jewels do not fully emerge. So the role of a parent is to help the child understand who they really are as divine, powerful, noble beings. And we wanted to find a language and a program that would help parents understand that, and then in simple tools, simple ways, bring those aspects to bear, to the front. And what is exciting is that within 2 weeks of finishing the book, back in 1991, our very first experience using and applying the early trainings that are now more sophisticated, more developed, for virtues, was in a small native village in northern British Columbia. And 6 months after we brought the program to Kinkham Inlet, we got a letter from the tribal elder and social services director there, and she said, "You have brought the spirit back to our people, and the light back to our people, and the spirit back to our village." And we were absolutely thrilled, because it was a proof that this material is universal. Everyone is crying out for a definition of what being human really looks like. And of course, the definition in the Virtues program is that being human is really being divine, reflecting the attributes of God that are our character.
You keep using this word virtues, but many people think that virtues are values. What are virtues?
That's a wonderful question. Virtues are aspects of character like caring, thoughtfulness, truthfulness, honesty, assertiveness, reverence, those kinds of things. Every culture has values. Biker gangs have values, but they may not necessarily reflect the best virtues. My brother-in-law is fond of giving the example that during World War II, for an American to be captured by the Japanese, that situation was one where his expression of courage, the virtue of courage, was to escape. It was his code to escape. And unfortunately, the Japanese thought that was cowardice and saw it as a very bad example of military behavior. For a Japanese to be captured, their honorable expression of courage was to commit suicide, which our GIs thought was cowardice. So you can see that the virtue and the value are not always the same. So virtues are really those aspects of human character which define our most conscious behavior.
Where did you find those virtues?
We actually researched the sacred writings of the world. And my brother-in-law happens to be a scholar in all of that and has elaborate computer files, and in fact has actually codified certain ancient texts that don't even exist in that form before he was able to do that work. So we found over 350 words which define human character, and from those we chose 52 so that a family could focus on one a week. And we call it Virtue of the Week.
And the whole project is just based on these 52 virtues?
And well, in fact, the Family Virtues Guide, which was the book we self-published in 1991, and then Penguin has been publishing it since 1997, that book focuses on a particular 52 that we felt were specifically important to a family. For the Virtues Project Educator's Guide, we've actually chosen a slightly different set of virtues for a school setting. And there are, in the works, a number of other applications which will include corporate and government agency kinds of arrangements of virtues.
The wonderful thing about the Virtues Project is that many people from different religions feel that they can use this model.
I remember in Seattle, which was just down the coast from our little island home and workshop in Canada, my sister being invited by the Methodist Church to give the Sunday homily based on the Virtues Guide because that church had used it so effectively. Later on in Los Angeles, the Church of Religious Science was using it as we discovered a national program for their Sunday school education. Religious groups of every kind have used it, school groups, corporations, even logging companies have adapted the Virtues program for enhancing the corporate environment because nowadays everybody's struggling to find a way to write a corporate mission statement that reflects the values of that corporation in a way that is palatable, and the virtues become wonderful tools and words to help with that definition. I was actually on the committee at Walt Disney Imagineering that we call Team Disney that helped rewrite the corporate values statement for Imagineering because it hadn't been written again since the 60s, and we had to rewrite it. And I made sure that there was a great deal of virtues language in the program because everybody responds to it.
You're watching Baha'i on Air. My name's Ilona Rodgers, and with me today is John Kavelin, who works for Disney Imagineering. How was the Virtues program born? I mean, how did the three of you get the inspiration to create the Virtues program?
My sister and her husband are both psychotherapists. Dan is a PhD shrink, specializing in pediatric psychology. My sister had been working in Victoria, British Columbia, as the spiritual care coordinator at a very highly respected hospice for people in the dying phase. And she was so deeply moved by the work with dying and with their families. And then she began to realize that people don't have a language that familiarizes them with the spiritual world in a way that's very real and very concrete. And in their work with the dying, as well as with children and families, they were aware that there was a real problem communicating with children about what their value is spiritually. I had left Los Angeles in total frustration at the materialism, the skewed values, and I needed a break, to be honest. So in moving to Canada, and especially a small island in beautiful British Columbia, which is not at all unlike the North Island of New Zealand, I was overwhelmed by the beauty of the place. So after a few months of just sort of drying, I shouldn't say drying out because I don't drink, but of sort of mellowing out, we put our heads together and said, you know, we have, among the three of us, writing skills, presenting skills, research skills, and design skills. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could use those to create materials to help children and families everywhere? And after a few small projects to sort of get our juices flowing, and for me to become more familiar with a computer and graphics on the desktop, we actually sat for a couple of days and prayed and meditated, as Baha'is are instructed and admonished to do, for guidance, because we really wanted to serve the world using the talents we had. And it is a miraculous thing that after that several days of just quiet reflection, 3 words seemed to appear out of nowhere: the Virtues Project. And once we heard those words, we literally sat down and filled sheets of paper with, what does this mean? What would this be? What would it look like? What would the programs and the publications be? And ultimately we settled on a book for kids and their parents that was then called the Virtues Guide. We later called it the Family Virtues Guide. So it was really born out of a sense of urgency, a sense of love, and a sense of service. And the result, after exactly 1 year and 1 week, was a dozen spiral-bound copies of this book that was about 150 pages long, something like that. And that first little trip on a seaplane to a little village in British Columbia where we tested it among the native people, and they loved it. And the rest has been amazing because the project is now over 10 years old. It's used in over 80 countries, I believe. It's been translated into more than 25 languages. There are 2 versions alone in Spanish and Chinese, and it's available in Latvian, Estonian, and Greek, and Fijian. There are people literally all over this part of the world, many of the smaller island nations, using it in their schools, in their faith groups, and in some cases government agencies. My sister and her husband have just returned from some very exciting workshops with government agencies in Guam, Saipan, and Taipei. And I believe there is a great deal of excitement at the government level for using the programs nationally, because they cut through all, or I should say they unify people of every different cultural and ethnic and religious background under a single idea about how children can be raised with a spiritual and moral character. And it doesn't matter if you're religious or not, it doesn't matter if you are deeply entrenched in your cultural traditions or not, if you're a casual city dweller. These virtues speak to the heart, they speak to the soul, and just hearing the words sometimes makes people smile, and then having a definition of those words is very, very helpful, and then having simple directions of how to practice the virtue, which is what the guide presents and the program provides, really gives people hope. And we're living in a very cynical time, as I don't need to remind your audience. There's dissension and strife the world over. People are retreating to a sort of a tribalism out of fear of other people who are different, either culturally or racially or religiously. And certainly the Baha'i message is that, you know, beneath all of the names we apply to each other, we're human beings, being human. And how do we define being human? It's being virtuous.
Is it because it is a fundamental principle of the Baha'i faith that you feel this way?
I am thrilled any time I meet someone who is committed to a religious or spiritual program. To me, it does not matter what that is.
Why is that?
Because ultimately there's one God, there's one religion. It has many names. So if someone chooses to be a Catholic or a Mormon or a Buddhist or a Christian or a Zoroastrian or Hindu, if they are committing themselves to a life of service to others and to acquiring virtues, they are noble beings. And it doesn't matter to me what name they apply to the program that helps them get there. Baha'is have an extremely authentic respect for people of other religions. It's not just lip service. We really love people who commit to a program of educating their spirits. If that religion is providing joy and happiness to them, wonderful. It doesn't mean we don't look forward to an opportunity to share also the Baha'i beliefs, because we believe they are extremely timely, designed by the Creator for the times we live in and the particular social problems of our time. And many of your audience members who watch this program probably know that we Baha'is believe that every religion, when it is revealed, brings 2 types of laws. One is the social laws for the time in which that prophet lives and the immediate future. And the other is the eternal laws, things like the 10 Commandments or the Sermon on the Mount or some of the characteristics of the Quran. These are universal and eternal messages from God to humankind that have to do with how we should behave both to the Creator, amongst each other, and with the world at large. The social laws change from age to age, and the social laws of the Baha'i faith were revealed at a time when the world was emerging from the Industrial Revolution into the Electronic Revolution. And we are now, in so many ways, completely interconnected in terms of electronics, communication, transportation. I can be here in, less than half a day from Japan, an entirely different culture, an entirely different climate, and yet it's part of the world. There are human beings here, just like everywhere else, all struggling to make a living, to be happy, to find ways to develop their character. And the Baha'i faith speaks to human beings, no matter where they are, from both an ancient, eternal way and a very contemporary way, because we have serious problems in this world in terms of governance, law, lawfulness, all sorts of international trade laws, that if they are not governed by an overarching vision of human value and human oneness, they are flawed from the Baha'i perspective. So the gift of the Baha'i faith to the world, in my view, is a global vision that is backed by actual concrete tools for human beings to emerge from nationalism, racism, tribalism, sexism, to a new globalism which says the earth is but one country and mankind its citizens.
If you believe there is only one race,
which was created in many different colors,
and if you believe that these differences are beautiful,
and should be the cause of unity,
and if you believe that our highest purpose
is to love each other
and live together as one family
with justice,
then you may want to look into the Baha'i faith.
Millions of people of every race, nation, and culture share these beliefs.
As members of the Baha'i faith,
as a designer, have you ever been able to use your skills for the Baha'i faith?
I have been very, very blessed with a number of opportunities to design large public events for the Baha'i faith. The first one of note would be the Baha'i International Peace Conference in San Francisco, and I believe that was in 1985. And for that, we had an audience of 10,000 people in the huge barn-like San Francisco Civic Auditorium. And it was a program that consisted primarily of evening speakers and entertainment.
It's the heart of the family of man. Whoa, beaten away. Whoa, beaten away. Whoa, it's beaten away.
Because an age so powerful that it represents the consummation of human evolution is dawning. An age so stupendous it defies our imagination. The sun of that age is rising.
Down in the valley, down by the sea, everywhere around the world.
So that was my first experience, and then some of the people who helped organize that event were later asked if they would work on the Bahá'í World Congress in New York City. That was to be held over the Thanksgiving weekend, American Thanksgiving, in 1992. And I spent actually 2 years on that project. The World Congress was a gathering of 30,000 Baha'is from over almost 180 countries, I believe. And it was a celebration of our diversity. And we had a massive central performance space in the well-known Jacob Javits Convention Center in New York City, which is a huge structure. And we had 2 gatherings a day for 15,000 people apiece. My challenge as the designer was to create an environment where everybody felt the sort of the unity of the faith, the excitement of New York, and some of the historical character of the city that is so significant to our history. So the set itself was an elaborate cityscape, abstract cityscape. And because of the audience in a gigantic circular arrangement around the stage, we had to have projection screens in 4 locations, great big, 18 by 24 foot projection screens, rear projection, so that you could see the actual person on stage, but also their image projected large. And in between all of that, I found a wonderful Baha'i landscape designer, and she created exquisite gardens in between all the screens in the city buildings, cityscape. We had a choir of 300, an orchestra of 100, and it was an extraordinary 4 days. And the entire thing, parts of the entire thing were broadcast on satellite around the world for the Baha'i audience.
Akia, Western Samoa, are you there? We are here.
As well, we had a 5-ballroom exhibit on the history of the Baha'i faith in New York City, centered on the son of our Prophet founder. The son's name was Abdul-Baha, as you know, and he came to New York in 1912. So the city of New York is a very special place for Baha'is around the world, and the exhibit occupying those ballrooms at the New York Hilton was to trace the history of Abdul-Baha in New York, the people he met on his journey across North America, including Canada, and back again to New York. So it was a wonderful opportunity, and I worked with a brilliant writer, producer named Elizabeth Martin. The two of us spent 2 years designing those exhibits.
There's a joke in this country that when visitors come here, they've only been on terra firma for about 5 seconds, and the first thing we say to them is, what do you think of New Zealand? I mean, what are your feelings now? This must be very different to Tokyo, just in people alone.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, after 7 months in Tokyo, it's a pleasure to be in a country where I can read all the signs, you know.
Yes.
But the other thing, I think, I have lived literally from Florida to Seattle, Maine to Santa Fe in the U.S., and I've lived in British Columbia for almost 8 years in Canada, and this is the most beautiful countryside I have ever seen. The countryside looks like an Arthur Rackham illustration. It is so beautiful. The way farmers bracket their fields, the way the tree line is left and not just decimated. The bush itself is a very different mix from what I'm used to. So I am absolutely spellbound by the beauty of this country. And the natives are, of course, so jaded by it.
Yeah.
I commented today in a store about how beautiful I thought it was, and they said, oh, we take it all for granted. But for me, it's quite stunning.
John, how did you become a Baha'i?
Actually, my parents became Baha'is in the late 30s. And they had both come from very diverse religious backgrounds. They were somewhat frustrated with what they felt was certain orthodoxies and narrow-mindedness in their traditions, and were looking for a religion that would truly unite the diversity of humankind. And they found the Baha'i faith. They raised their 3 children in a Baha'i tradition, but of course in our faith you must choose on your own to become a Baha'i. And at 15, which we consider the age of maturity, I made that choice. So I've been a Baha'i quite a while. And it's been an incredible adventure.
John, I hope you have a wonderful conference here in Auckland. It's been a great pleasure having you here. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on Baha'i On Air. My name's Ilona Rodgers. If you'd like more information about the Baha'i faith, why don't you look at our website, baha'i.org.nz, or watch us next week. Thank you.